look at solving this system of equations now using a calculator. We've done it by hand, and this isn't a very complicated one because it's only two equations with two unknowns. But we're going to go over and we're going to look at the calculator and see how that would work out. So the first step is to actually go over and enter all of your information in using the calculator under its matrix menu. So you notice the word matrix right here. It's in blue, so that's going to be second and matrix. It'll bring up our matrices. These are just blank matrices that we wanted to plug stuff in, and you can see I've already got something plugged into A and B. So let's look at those. If I go over to edit and I hit enter, now notice my cursor is on number 1, which is the matrix A. It'll show me what's in that matrix. And I can see that here it's 2, 3, 4, and -9. If you go back and look at what we had earlier, that's matrix A, 2, 3, 4, and -9. Right? So I just kind of brought that over and I plugged it into my matrix A in the equation in the calculator. All right. The next step, I'm going to quit out of this and then go back and look at second matrix. And we're going to look at matrix B. If you look at matrix B, it has 2 and -1. If we go back to our equation and look over here at matrix B, and that's what we have right here, 2 and -1. So make sure that you tell it to be the right size. So 2 enter, 1 enter, and it'll rewrite your matrix to be the right size, and you can enter those corresponding numbers. Right? If we're going to go back, and we will quit out of this. Now, if you remember, the operation that we did to solve this was A inverse times B, and it could be any letter, but it's that inverse of this matrix times the coefficient matrix on the other side, which in this case it would be your matrix for your constant values. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead second, bring up that matrix. I don't want to edit it. I actually want to use it. So it defaults to that. I'm going to hit enter. But I don't want just the first matrix. I want the inverse. So A inverse, and then I want to go get matrix B. I go down. I hit enter, and that's exactly what we had here. And I happen to use A and B in my drawing here because I knew that we were going to come back and look at this, and I tend to do that all the time so I don't get confused. And so if I hit enter, it shows me here I have 0.5 and 0.33333. So let's change that to fractions, and I believe we know what that's going to be, but it's 1/2 and 1/3, exactly what we found it to be here. That was a lot faster. Now, is it relevant that you know how to do this by hand? Absolutely. Because it's matrix multiplication, it's finding inverses, determinants, all of the things that we learned how to do last week, you're putting into practice and you're applying that knowledge. So knowing how to do this, yes, I'm going to ask you to do at least one of these by hand. So you can prove to me that you really have learned how to use those things. Now, will I let you use the calculator? Absolutely. And specifically, we're going to go and talk about one that I probably will not show you how to do by hand. So we're going to go in and we're going to look at another matrix. So we're going to go in and I'm going to go back to matrix A, and we're going to introduce, we're going to create some new matrices so that we can solve this by using a calculator. And this one's going to be a bigger one. It's going to be a 3 by 3. So I'm going to edit that matrix. And so we're going to have a 3 by 3 matrix. So let me go and show you what matrix we're going to be working with. So if I scroll down here, the new matrix equations that we're going to be working with right now is, it's going to be x minus 2y plus 3z equals 3. And then we're going to have 2x plus y plus 5z equals 8. And then 3x minus y minus 3z is equal to -22. Now this is 3 variables, and notice I have 3 equations this time. That's kind of how it works As long as I have the same number of equations that I do unknown values, then doing this method will always tend to work out. The only problem you'll have is if you create a matrix here with the coefficient matrix, if it will generate a 0 determinant, then this method won't work. Okay, and you'll get an error in the calculator. So this one's not going to work. We're going to go ahead and enter those values into the matrix here. And so we're going to enter the coefficient matrix first. So that's going to be 1, -2, 3, and then 2, 1. And if you're watching along with this, I encourage you to rewind it to the beginning and actually do this with me if you have your calculator with you. It would really make sense that you can kind of follow along after you've done it with me or even by yourself. Make sure that you really do understand what it is that's going on. Now I'm going to double check because I make a habit of checking. So 1, -2, 3, 2, 1, 5, 3, -1, -3. Great. Going to go ahead and I'm going to go back into matrix B this time. Oops. Second quit. Always quit first because sometimes it gets tricky and you trying to put a matrix inside a matrix and that gets kind of not good. So we're going to go down to matrix B. And this one's going to be the 3 numbers on the other side. So this is going to end up being a 3 by 1. And so we can have 3. Oops. That is a 1. And we're going to have 3, 8, and -22. Not -22, but there we go. So I've got that done. I'm going to go right to my home screen and do what I just did earlier. Now, a little trick, if you have a updated calculator, I can scroll back up to previous entries and answers, and I can select those with just going up, choosing enter, and I have it here. Now, A is different than what it was last time because I went ahead and into the matrix menu and changed it. So A and B here are both different. So I've hit enter. There we go. My answer is -4, 1, and 3. So if I go back into my matrix, if I were going to write this out, then what it would have looked like would have been 1, -2, 3, then 2, 1, 5, 3, -1, -3. And so this was matrix A. And then we would have had here X, Y, and Z, which would have been equal to the constant values 3, 8, and -22. So this is the equation that I was solving. And after it's all said and done, what I really get down to, if I were to actually attempt this one by hand, it would be a lot like the other one, just a lot more involved, a lot longer because you have all this other stuff. Then my solution is going to be this matrix, -4, 1, and 3. So -4, 1, and 3. And that tells me exactly that X, right? And so it's just right what it looks like. X is 4, Y is 1, and Z is +3. So X is -4, Y is 1, Z is 3. Exactly. And that took almost no time. If I understand that I can take this matrix and I can take this matrix, enter those into my calculator just like this, plug up this A inverse B, and punch it in like that, and I've got my solution. Okay, super simple. And I'm not going to ask you to do a 3 by 3 by hand. That's a lot more work than you even know how to do. So no worries about that. But what you will have to do is this part. So make sure if you haven't checked out the video where I do the solving the systems by hand, make sure you check that out. Make sure that if you haven't practiced it by hand or by using the calculator, make sure that you take a minute and try this on your own. Don't just think you can watch it and it sinks in really well. If you've got any questions, bring them to class.